in my next life, I'm going to write a thing called the Geo Bible. So after Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall inherit the kingdom of heaven." Next slide. That would be the whole Bible. So, the sense of identity. How many of you serve congregations or chaplains? Okay, phenomenal. I've been in states where it's been less than half of people serve congregations. When you look across the Army National Guard, only 45% of our chaplains serve full or part-time local congregations. I'm going to show you what's happened since post-Vietnam through today. And so just briefly, the Chief of Chaplains, his philosophy of ministry is Ephesians 4:1-6. Live out the call to which you've been called. I talked to a rabbi friend of mine, so what would be equivalent to that? He said Isaiah 6:1-8, when Isaiah is called, "Here I am, send me, O Lord." And so I started out with Newport Church of God. This place was up in the middle of nowhere. If you've ever been to Pennsylvania, the middle of nowhere. One stoplight. More deer than people. That's what Newport was all about. The funeral director was David Myers, and he had this word of wisdom for me. I stopped in and introduced myself to Mr. Myers, and he said, "Where did you get your education?" I told him where I went to seminary. He said, "Wrong, you're going to get it here." And I got it there. Because I learned about people, I learned about failure, I learned about long meetings about phone bills and the color of paint in the women's restroom, all that stuff for 3 years. And I jumped ship and went to the Presbyterians. Okay? And at that church, I was there for 12 years. And there I got very involved in the community. It was really closer to where I grew up. And during that time, we built the addition. The church grew. It was phenomenal. And after we broke ground, I jumped ship. And I went down to Red Clay Creek Presbyterian Church. Was there, a 1,200 member church. And here's what I learned there. I followed a guy who was asked to leave. This brilliant pastor had wrestling mats in the fellowship hall of the church. And at night, he would wrestle the young boys. And then the next morning, he would write his sexual fantasies about the boys, not on his personal computer, the church computer. Pretty stupid. So he was asked to leave. And I went in there with the idea of having to build up trust. And for the first year, I made 400 personal family calls to families in the congregation to put my face in front of them and talk to them. And I tell you this for the following reason. When you have that cross or tablet or crescent above your name or whatever it might be, people trust you. Do not violate that trust. Because it's not just you, it's the entire corps whose reputation can be marred. So you have a position responsibility, whether you want it or not, you're on a pedestal. People look at you. You live in a fishbowl every single day. And so you need to take stock in that people trust you, and when you violate that trust, it's not just you, it's the chaplain corps. I went from Red Clay Presbyterian Church out to Pacific Palisades Presbyterian Church. It's located between Santa Monica and Malibu, California. Okay? The church, I followed a guy who was there for 20 years. And in my own little mind, I thought I had the ego and the personality to follow the first cousin of Jesus. I didn't know he was the first cousin of Jesus. And after 2 years, I learned how close he was related to Christ. And so the point is, there, a beautiful place, by the way, valet parking. I mean, that's what they had up there. They would never give up valet parking. That's what they had. So I left there and got deployed to Iraq. I came back, found a position down at NGB on ADOS in the Joint Staff. In the meantime, I would preach on Sundays at the contemporary service at Westminster Presbyterian Church. I call it Six Flags Over Jesus. It's one of these big operations that takes place. 1,200 people in and out the door every Sunday, 3 or 4 services, that kind of thing. And then when I became the state chaplain of Delaware, I became the temporary pastor for Covenant Presbyterian Church, who went through a terrible church split over a couple issues in the Presbyterian Church. And I think I've told some of you this before, you know, Southern Baptists take empty buildings and make them churches. Presbyterians take churches and make them empty buildings. That's what we were very good at. And so again, building up trust that is there. And my point is that no matter what I've done as a chaplain, I've always been connected to a congregation. That's in my DNA. That's what I'm called to do. This to me is not just a job. It's not just going to work at 7 and going home at 5 o'clock. It's what I am. It's who God has called me to be. And I would encourage you to live out that call that the Chief of Chaplains emphasizes admirably so every time. I'm going to ask Messer and Kevin, he has a couple words to say about NCOs and Senior Religious Affairs Specialists about that sense of call as well. Phil?
Yeah, so on October 1st, our name officially changed. just to get it straight, because there's some confusion out there, your job title is Religious Affairs Specialist, no matter what your rank is. Just like Chaplain Assistant, it's Religious Affairs Specialist. It's only when you get into your job title, like I would be at NGB, I'm the Master Religious Affairs Specialist, I'm an E8. You know, if you're E7, Senior, so they have these other differentiations. But when somebody asks you, Religious Affairs Specialist, big reason they did that, trying to get a little bit more in line with some of the other, the JAG, the medical corps, some of the other corps, and they're building a credentialing profile with that when you're going to school. So everybody, we had a couple people here just came out of AIT. So as you work through your military career, and this is going to change starting in June. They tweaked it again, so it's gonna change. But you'll start getting college credit for your training. So when you're all done, you'll have, maybe if you want to go into ministry with your church or something, you'll have some accreditation. Not that this would be a pastor, but maybe if you're going to be a youth leader or what have you. So right now they're working with South Carolina University, where you may end up going to school, and University of Kansas. Those seem to be the two that are jumping on board. Here's my biggest thing on the Religious Affairs Specialist, because chaplains always ask me, what their role is. Their role is everything besides living your call part.
You should crawl.
It is crawl. I'm sorry. That's right. Basically, you need to be doing what you went to seminary for. You need to be preaching and counseling and everything else. You need to try to hand off to your religious affairs specialist. So when Chaplain Grant and I, work together, for instance, we're planning this big training event down in Peck we've done in the last 5 years. I'm taking care of most of the logistics, anything that he doesn't need to do, and then he helps plug in the speakers and a lot of the ideas and themes and stuff. But you have to take care of that stuff. If you don't, then you're basically wasting their calling. You're not chaplains in the military, religious affairs specialists. You want to make that jump over, well then go to school and do that, and then become a chaplain. But up until that time, fulfill your role as an NCO. And I will tell you, I taught, and we talked about this, because you don't have an E7 in your state. We didn't have one where I was either, so I made a lateral transfer right in this building. I had to walk down the hall to the RTI and said, hey, I'm a high school teacher, let me teach. So I walked over and got my E7 as a teacher. And what I learned through that, because they put me in OCS, one, we train our officers different than NCOs. That was the first thing that was really evident to me. But the second thing is, I don't care, and he's a pretty dynamic person, but he still has blind spots, and most officers do. When you walk into the room, what you don't realize is 90% of the force is enlisted in NCOs. When you come off AIT, how many officers did you see in basic training in AIT? Graduation. That was the only time you saw them, right? So your formative time coming into the military, you're around NCOs, right? So now you take that person, put them in formation, they got a squad leader, platoon sergeant. They're not necessarily in contact with others. So when he walks in the room, or any other officers walk in the room, first thing this enlisted looks at is your rank, all right? And they might have a cross, you might be a good guy, yeah, but you're still an officer in the U.S. Army, all right? So that's going to put up a barrier to you. You will not realize that in your career, even though you think you're everything, you're still going to have a barrier. And that's where that enlisted soldier knocks down that barrier. They know what that average is. And to tell you the truth, they will ask them first whether they should go to you probably before they go to you. If you're a good religious affairs specialist, they will trust them whether should I go see my chaplain. So I think the last thing, and I've got a couple more points, but I'll end on this one. Make sure when he says live your call, make sure you keep building your depth as a pastor, as a minister, because if you don't have that, you will lose you'll lose those enlisted and NCOs. I always tell, especially if you're not building a platform, and you're working in a church or working with, prison ministries or doing things outside of coming here in a drill weekend. Because when things get really tough, that enlisted person will know, where you're really at spiritually, and so you need to be there for them. So, all right.
Okay.
Okay. No, I got two more, but I'll come back later.
Okay, come back there. Okay, come on. By the way, Bill and I are very close. We meet about 6-7 times a day. We talk on the weekends. Trusted counselor. I listen to him 99.9% of the time. And just a great friend, great colleague. So I appreciate that. You may have seen this. How many have seen Guard 4.0 from General Academy? Some of you have seen this. What General Academy has done, he's taken the National Guard and looked at the history from post-Vietnam through 2017. He says Guard 1.0 is basically post-Vietnam War. After the Vietnam War, he said, General Abrams sat back and said, you know, there's something wrong here. We didn't have any skin in the game from the Guard or from the reserves. People joined the Guard to get out of being drafted. And so now, when we go to war, we were going to make sure that we have some skin in the game, Guard, Reserve, and Active, all three combos engaged. And so that took place. Guard 2.0 was really about the time of Reagan, and at that time we had more money, we had more standards, we had parity, so to speak. In fact, when I joined the Guard in 1989 in Pennsylvania, I sweated over the PT test. I was worried. And I showed up for the PT test along the banks of the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania, and the first sergeant said, Chaplain, don't worry. Everybody passes the PT test. Now those days have changed dramatically. And when I joined, they said, Chaplain, don't worry, you'll never get deployed. Maybe a prison riot, maybe a flood, but don't worry, you'll never get deployed. Times have changed dramatically. And so you get to 2.5, and you have this peace dividend, this roundout concept, etc. But you get to 3.0, it's when the towers go down. And so at that point, became more of an operational reserve as opposed to strategic reserve. And now in 2017 plus, we are much more operational. And the money is flowing. And you're hearing about focused readiness. You're hearing briefs about the peninsula. You're hearing about what can happen. It's not a matter if you'll get deployed, it is when you'll get deployed. And so when you look at the active Guard Reserve, the Guard Reserve make up 53% of the total Army. And the Guard and Reserve Chaplain Corps make up 51% of the total Chaplain Corps. And what does that underscore? That means you gotta be ready. You gotta take care of yourself. It's not just that PT test once a year. It's not just, hey, I got my plan together. It's having a plan, a training plan that prepares you so at a moment's notice, you can deploy. And Billy, I think you have some words about deployments as well.
So how many opportunities are out there for chaplains right now on tour duty? Anybody know that? No. Who goes to tour duty once a month? Anybody? Okay. So everything in the Army gets pushed into tour duty. All right, usually goes through our office. We push everything down to the Joint Force Headquarters level. We do understand the difficulty getting into tour duty, or you Google Mob Cop, whatever. But that's where everything is pushed. Right now there's 17 opportunities for chaplains. There's 3 for lieutenant colonels. So you're trying to get promoted, send one of those guys away and move on up, all right? So look for opportunities for them to excel. You know, so, but there's a lot of opportunities. They're not all overseas. We got 3 at Fort Carson right now. Right when I left the office, we also get these things called WIAS taskers, worldwide augmentees. And that's when active duty says, I'd like somebody in 30 days, 60, maybe I'd wait to 90, but I really need somebody now. So what active duty's doing is, instead of taking somebody out of their formation and replacing somebody downrange, maybe they left because they were sick, injured, whatever, they're asking the Guard to go and fill these opportunities. So those come pretty quick. So my advice to you is this: you want to go anywhere, you know, whether it's short or long term, make sure your paperwork's in order, because the active duty works on kind of like a 30-day window. We kind of work on a 90-day window. We try to find a happy medium somewhere in there, and typically our roadblocks are a little bit getting permission. The tag has to release you, so you need to better go through Chaplain Foster. Don't volunteer for something and start doing all that, not letting him know, all right? That's where I get the phone call. You know, make sure that you let your chaplain know you want to do this, you want to volunteer, because you're going to leave your unit for a while. And we have shorter ones. For instance, I call it the rabbi tour. So, you know, during the high holy times, we send a rabbi over for 45 days, and we're always looking for a young NCO to do that. You know, we grab you, we throw you down, you go to Afghanistan, Iraq, you know, Kuwait, you do a little circuit, and you come back to the States. Those are great for somebody who has a job that they just can't get away with for a long period of time. Typically, what you do is you just email me or call me and say, put me on the rabbi tour list. I pretty much handpick those people, because I'm going to talk to Master Sergeant Huffman and make sure I got somebody squared away that can go. Because I have no time to, you know, waste to try to get them on that tour. So make sure you do that. In our office, for instance, we have some small, you know, a small pool of Title 10. We'll be looking for an E5, E6 to replace our installation on 56 Mike that's moving on to a different position. That's probably going to happen in the next, we just found out, so maybe we fill that in the next 30, 60 days. You know, we'll probably push something out for that. I would say the big takeaway on these tours though is have your material ready. If you're going to take an individual tour, here's how it's going to happen. You're going to do your paperwork, and I'll coordinate with the Pentagon. They'll say your paperwork's good. You will fly into Fort Bliss on a Saturday. You will be gone by the next Friday. All right? So there's not a big train up. Then the Army's we are now telling active duty, we are ready to go. You know, so be ready to go, because you're going to hit the ground running. I sent an E5 from Florida in Kuwait. He got a 600-seat, you know, chapel that he was the NCOIC of day one. Boom, there you go, you're it. So you know, just so you know, you're going to walk into something that your learning curve will be pretty quick. So, but we're excited about that opportunity. They're coming to us more and more. They're seeing the Guard. Our level has gone up tremendously, and active duty is trusting us to do that. And this is not going to happen during my remainder time, but you're going to happen to these young, privates and specialists. Sometime in your career, you're going to see moving between the 3 compos being much easier. You're going to be able to go and spend some time active duty, maybe go to reserve. You're going to have an active duty. You'll have an active duty 56 Micah chaplain in this room at one of your CAS events. It's going to happen if we're going down that road. It'll be intermixed. You're already getting commanders off active duty coming into the Guard formations and commanding units. So it'll keep building. So. All right, that was my point 2.
Okay, point 2. We'll get point 3 a little later on. I would say this, is that I think this is probably the best time we've had a great working relationship between all 3 compos, active, Guard, reserve. Chaplain Gurley has made it a point of calling in Chaplain Pluskowski, my counterpart on reserves. Chaplain Soldier, who's active duty, deputy chief of chaplains, and myself, we meet on a regular basis every 6 to 8 weeks because of his travel schedule, etc. And I take advantage of people like Jeff Zust, who's here from First Army. It's not just the First Army training, but also the experience that Jeff has for teaching, and it's just great. And Kevin, it's just phenomenal. So we have that relationship to reach across all 3 compos and really get the best that we have to offer from each in preparation. One more thing about the training piece. We always get these phone calls last minute saying, hey, I got to get my chaplain captain into the C4 course. There's no seats available. Well, we did some research. There's lots of seats available. You know what our problem is? Chaplain captains show up at the schoolhouse and they do not pass height weight, and they don't pass their APFT. That's number 1. We have chaplain captains who enroll in the distance learning course, and then for some reason, I'm not going to finish it this time around. We had one chaplain captain in the Army National Guard who really consumed 4 school seats. The person joined, dropped out. Joined, dropped out. Joined, dropped out, joined, and finished. 4 seats, which really denied opportunities across the 54 for other qualified people to take that course. And what's going to happen in the future, here's what's going to happen. So if you enroll and you drop out, you won't be able to enroll for another 6 months. You enroll again and dropped out, you're done for a year. You do it a 3rd time, there may not be a 3rd time. In this era of restricted resources, and we have plenty of seats, you gotta follow through. That's the whole sense of this preparedness and readiness and training. You gotta do it. You gotta make the commitment. So we're gonna have an OML list that comes out of my office, and you're gonna be given the opportunity to enroll. If you drop out, it'll be a 6-month wait. 2nd time, a year wait. And so be prepared. Things are changing. And so we have that Guard 4.0. Now, I thought to myself, what if we took Guard 4.0 and talk about the chaplaincy 4.0 over time since the post-Vietnam War through current? And I keep this is like a work in progress. So post-Vietnam, most of the chaplains in the Army National Guard, they went to brick and mortar schools. They had 96 hours of graduate degree training. They served congregations. They were CPE trained. They were great pastors, lousy staff officers. Okay? And so we go through this, again, Guard 2.0, 96 hours, and then we hit Gulf War 1, and the towers go down, and we lowered our standards. We went from 96 hours of graduate degree study to 72 hours. And guess what popped up on the radar screen? Online education. And I will tell you, without any shame, I am not a big online education fan. I do not want to go to a medical doctor and see University of Phoenix hanging on the wall if I'm going to have surgery. It's not going to happen. And for me, if you're talking about being professional, and getting trained, not just getting a degree. Anybody can get a degree. But if you want to get an education, I'm going to say go to a brick and mortar place. Even if it's just half of that education, go to a brick and mortar place. So when you sit down and you hear about form criticism of the New Testament, you can talk to somebody, hey, I'm not sure I buy that or I do buy it or why you do. We're talking about J, E, P, and D sources in the Old Testament. Talk with people about that. You don't get to do that, at least I don't think you do with online education. So we lowered the standards, online education popped up, and then what we had was our chaplain strength exceeded 95%. We had over 600 chaplain candidates in the system because we lowered the standards, and we wanted people, and we brought them in by droves. And now, in 2017, only 45% of our chaplains are in full or part-time ministry in a congregation. They get an online degree. It's 72 hours. They're not CPE trained. And here's what we have. We have chaplains now who are phenomenal staff officers, but I'm not sure how effective they are as chaplains. I'm just making a guess about that. I'm not sure it's true with everybody, but with some. The other thing that's happened too, and it happened to me, I was serving that church, that beautiful church in Pacific Palisades, California, with valet parking and blah, 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 blah. I get deployed, and when I announced to the congregation, it just shows how people are out of touch. I had a family come to me and say, "You're going to take your family along with you to Iraq?" "Oh yeah, we're going to pop up a family vacation a couple notches this year. See how the kids are more like, you know, out of touch." And so the point is, it's a different world. So the point is that when you get deployed, and they said that's your problem, and during the deployment, this isn't working out for us, it's not working out for me, we parted ways. When people get deployed, the congregation will say, "You know what? Hey, we're behind you 100%. That second time, "Hey, what's going on here? You really got to go? What about us?" And then for those who go a third time, and guess what? We're not protected by USERRA laws. So a church can say, or a congregation can say, "You know what? We're done with you." And they have. And so I think that's the other contributing factor to this 45% figure that is there. But the troubling thing about that is the 55% who aren't even involved in the congregation. They don't even do adult ed. They don't do funerals. They don't do weddings. They don't do counseling. They don't help lead worship. They don't even go on to worship. Where's your credibility? How can people believe in you or trust you if you're not even living out your call in a local congregation? And that troubles me immensely. I want to pass over to Messer and Kevin. You got your third point? You want to wait?
Yeah, I want to get it out of the way, sir.
Yeah.
You know? When I came to NGB, I came in 2013,
And one of the part of the interview I had was, you know, Chaplain Morris at that time was saying, I want somebody that looked at the Guard from an M-Day perspective, rather than a Title X person moving them in there. So I was a high school teacher in Oregon. So like most of the time we do training, it's much easier to get chaplains typically to training events because your schedule is different. Most of my 56 mics, they do everything. They're going to college, they work as police officers, they're all over the place. It's a little more difficult to pull them into things. So my perspective always at NGB was, how do I reach out to them and get them the information they need? But then also, as we look forward to train the force, how do you do that when you're a high school teacher or whatever? You know, because you have a limited amount of time to absorb things and get prepared. And one of my pet peeves was always in the States. I don't know if you have some Title 32 people, I'll apologize to you maybe, but my pet peeve was when I'd go to a drill weekend and they'd take Monday or Tuesday off. I well, I gotta go back in the classroom tomorrow and I got, 150 kids I gotta teach, Nobody gave me any time off, I still have to prepare lesson plans, do that stuff. So that my mindset always at NGB was, try to do as much as we can to help you out in the field so you can move on. So my last point is mainly geared at the chaplains as far as being a supervisory role. You cannot do everything you think you need to do for that NCO or enlisted soldier that you have. I mean, you'll want to, but you can't because you're not an NCO, all right? So you're not really, maybe not quite sure what they need to do. You got to get them a mentor, somebody on the NCO side, whether make sure they're connected to an individual or their platoon sergeant, whatever. But they have to help track their career to make them a well-rounded soldier. And you have to encourage them. And I was fortunate, I think, in a way. My whole career has always been a 56 mic. So I'm coming up on 30 years. That's all I've ever done except for that little slide over to the RTI. But I always considered myself a 56 mic. That's really unrealistic in the Guard. When I got the NGB, I didn't realize all the gaps we had. Your state has a huge gap. You have no E7. All right, so how do you work your way up? You have to get a secondary MOS, and you got to encourage them to do that. So as chaplains, you have somebody that's high speed. You want them to reach Sergeant Major. And no matter what, even if they're saying, hey, I'm only doing this for 4 years, pay off my school, you always have a career path to sergeant major. I never thought I didn't even know anything about the guard. I came off active duty out of Germany. I was going to go back and teach school, and some sergeant major grabbed me by the ear and said, "Here, you're in Iowa, show up here." And he was smart. He knew as a school teacher. I came back in March. What did he do? He put me on orders for 3 months. Knew that would hook me in, so he was a smart sergeant major. But the one thing I did lose track of somewhere in my career, because I did enjoy doing the 56 mic stuff when I was in Oregon, was I didn't really look left or right. And, you know, there was no sergeant major 56 mics in Oregon. There's none here in this state. So if I wanted to do that, there's certain things I have to do. So I encourage you to make sure that your 56 mics are seeking leadership opportunities, especially when they get higher rank. You need to fill in, be a platoon sergeant, squad leader. Encourage them to be first sergeants. We'd be great first sergeants. We know how to do multiple tasks, and we're used to dealing with crises and people, so we'd be good first sergeants. That's the only way they'll get picked up to go to Sergeant Major Academy and then move on from there. And I tell you this because as I leave NGB, the position I'm in is a E9 Sergeant Major position. It was downgraded. They call it, or they basically the pay thing was at E8, so they brought me in as E8. But we want to get back to Sergeant Major, and I've told Sergeant Major Sampa, the new Army National Guard Sergeant Major, I said I will build a bench because I'll encourage everybody out there in the state to reach for Sergeant Major. So then when that position opens up, no matter where they are, maybe they're Sergeant Majors of RTI or whatever, but they can come back into the formation and serve at NGB and what we call one-time occasional tour, OTOT tour. So that's kind of where we're heading. I communicate mainly with your master sergeant in the state, but make sure. Chaplain, I'm done asking this other day because he's going active duty. He's in my office. And he says, and I don't know, I always have a pet peeve because I'm around captains a lot. They probably irritate me more than any rank in the Army, all right? Maybe because they're smart enough, they know they're pretty good, but they have all kinds of gaps, you know? So my captain came to me and says, I need to go talk to this major about how to manage my 56 mic. I'm like, why am I sitting here? You know, it's kind of like, no, you don't go see the major, we talk, you know? And one of the things that we discussed was some of the things that we just discussed here, but, you know, for him to work with that 56 mic, and I go back to the first chaplain I had when I came on active duty. He asked me 3 questions. Why did you join the Army? What skill sets did you bring, and what are you trying to get out of this? You know, and that was day 1, and I've always taken that through my whole career. So know that about your 56 mic. Know where they want to be, and then encourage them to get there, even if that means losing them. You know, if you got to push them out the door, then push them out the door. You know, but you'll get somebody else. The Army always fills, you know, those ranks, so don't worry about it and do that. But work hand in hand with them. You cannot do your job. I don't care how good you are. You will not be as effective as you think you are if you don't use that 56 mic. They know where all the little gaps are in your unit. So that's my last point, sir.
Well,
no jokes.
No jokes.
No.
Okay, by the way, here's a saying in California. What they say is, enough about me, let's talk about you. What do you think about me? That's what they think in California. And so you have the Chaplain Court, Eloise, and this one from Chaplain Hurley. You know, and again, we've gone into a new thing about leadership. And some would say, live the call. I've talked about that. But the sense of, be the chaplain. You know, be the one who offers some advice to the commander. Show some leadership. Don't just stand in the corner, but assert yourself in a constructive way. And build that relationship. Whether it be touching base during the week and not just on drill weekend, but also be that champion of religious freedom for people. There's, you know, I'm going to show you a figure up here later on for Illinois that shows the breakdown of your religious makeup. But, you know, it's a changing world. I got 3 kids, ages 37, 35, and 33, and none of them go to church. None of them go to worship. Troubles their mother, troubles me greatly. I like to think it's because they heard some great sermons growing up. I know that's not the case. And so they're not involved. They're spiritual, they're religious, but they're not connected to anything that's organized. And that's the world that we are moving into. And so then the question is, as you develop a CMRP, a Command Master Religious Plan program, how do you do that for folks who may not have that background? Let me tell you a story. I did a wedding about maybe 15 years ago. And of course, what do you always read at a wedding, a Christian wedding? You read 1 Corinthians 13, okay, 4-7, love is patient, love is kind, blah, 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 blah. And so after the wedding, this young couple came up to me and said, Ed, that was beautiful. Did you write that? You know, that's the kind of, if someone would say, hey, am I my brother's keeper? You know where that comes from, right? The song by the Birds, you know, out of Ecclesiastes 3. You know the song? Yeah. Do you know the song? Okay, turn, 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 okay? Most people may not know where that comes from. And so it's a different world that we're living in. And so live the call, you know, care for soldiers and families. I had a guy in my office who came to me one time and he said, Chaplain Brand, I want to be able to coach my son's football team. Can I come in at like 6 o'clock in the morning and leave at 2? That way I put in my 8 hours. It's not about hours. And I said, no, it's not about hours. You gotta be there for people. Most people aren't there at 6 o'clock. If you've been to the National Guard Bureau, most people are not there at 6 o'clock in the morning. And if you're National Guard Bureau, most people aren't there at 2:30 in the afternoon either. You know? You can find a parking space anytime after 2:30. The point is, when I'm there like 5:30, 6 o'clock, that's when people wander down and say, Chaplain, you got a couple minutes to talk. You gotta be available to people. It's not about hours, it's about caring for people. It's about getting in the car and going somewhere. I've done that numerous times. So be with the people. You know, it's the Anderson Cooper thing. Here's my office, but here's where I work. I'm Presbyterian. I went to my denominational retreat about 2 years ago in Lake Tahoe, California. And I'm meeting with this guy who's a retired Air Force chaplain. I hate to beat up on the Air Force folks, but I will. And so he's going back to the church to serve a congregation. So I said, how is it? He goes, oh, it's tough. I said, what's tough about it? He goes, I'm still trying to teach my people to see me in my office. And I'm thinking, you know, get out of the office. Pick up the phone, call somebody. Can I stop over and have coffee and talk about the life in the church? It's that kind of initiative that I believe commanders are expecting. It's an initiative that I think you need to show for credibility. Because I tell you what, if I just stayed in my office at NGB, I think General Cabinet would say, you know what, thanks for your service, it's time to go back to Delaware. This is what would happen. You gotta get out and see people. And so enough said about that. But care for soldiers and families. And here's a great, you know, you talk about the, I think Thatchuk, he's buried in Minnesota. That'll give you mass to people, you know, his 90, he dies later on. He's out there with the people. And, you know, we talked about the 4 chaplains. That to me is the model of service. You know, greater love hath no man or woman than to give their life for another. And is it that kind of dedication that we have as chaplains? Or is it just a job, or worse yet, is it just a hobby? If it's a hobby, please leave. We'll make out without you. If it's just a job, please leave. It's a calling, please. And I look at my own denomination, I made fun of it, and we're declining. And we have people who are just sitting in their office doing nothing. And it frustrates me to no end as a religious leader. So here's our dashboard across the 54. And you'll see this is through the third quarter of FY17, what we've been doing. 38,000 counseling sessions across the 54. Okay? We didn't put up the pledge amount, it'd be very embarrassing, for like $5. Boy, tough crowd. I know you're hungry. Military funerals, you'll find if you have a Google News alert and you put in National Guard or chaplain, you get a lot of information every single day that they push out automatically. And I think New York State was a state who did like an unbelievable number of military funerals for active and retired people. It's just skyrocketing what they do. So the Guard is always there. Again, it's not because, well, it's because we're in the community. But again, it's a team effort among all 3 complexes. It is. We got to look at it as a team effort. We do. We have chapels. The numbers are there. The thing I want to highlight over here is the fact that we need to do some work on our diversity. You know, we're not too hot in that area. You know, you look at the 94% of our chaplains are male, and only 83% of our end strength are male. And we got 6% of our females are chaplains. End strength is 17%. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. There's some denominations who don't ordain females to ministry, and that's just the fact of the matter. But still, if we're out to build up our diversity, we need to take that initiative. And we're the best recruiters there are for the chaplaincy, to ask people to consider the National Guard chaplaincy. You know, African American wise, that's 8% are African American, 16% are in strength. There's an imbalance that's there. We need to do a better job with our diversity. Protestant wise, you know, we're like taking over, 95%. Here's what we're hurting, 4% of our chaplains are Catholic, 50% of our strength is Catholic. And it's just already it's a tough door to open for that. You see this no religious preference piece, well it's a coding issue. I mean, people are connected. Like I said, in the old days, mainline denominations. Nowadays, it's a lot of different kind of churches, different kind of religious organizations that are endorsing people for the ministry. And we have no Buddhist, no Hindu, no Islam. We have 7 Jewish rabbis, 7 rabbis that are there. And so, anyways, this slide, you can have this deck. Good. Here's Illinois' demographics. Here's the number that sticks out to me. 37% of your end strength says no religious preference. 37%. So how does that change your CMRP? How do you connect to people? I'm 58 years old. I like the old ends. I'm an old guy. And that's where we need the younger people who have an idea of what it means to reach out to someone who is 30-some years old or late 20s or mid-20s. And people like me need to be open to that approach, not closed-minded. We have to do that. I guess the Colonel piece, is that wait for you to take him? Is it coming up soon? Okay, well, wasn't given out to anybody? Because here's what happens. We'll get a call from the state. In fact, I got a call from my state, Delaware. And we have an 06 end-day position for the chaplain. The current full-time support chaplain, right now, the highest ranking Army person in the Delaware National Guard is a major. And so the chief of staff, a good friend of mine, calls me and says, hey, Ed, can we take that 06 position and give it somewhere else, knowing that we'll give it back to the chaplain corps? And I said no. Because if we lose it, we may not get it back. I trust you. I love you. I believe in you. But you're not giving me that position forever. And so I still get invited to the military ball. I still get emails every now and then, but it's not the same relationship that it was. I'm just joking. It's just the whole point. So you can see the breakdowns there. And these are notes from Chaplain Douglas. Chavolik looks good, 1 lieutenant. First captain, 6 out of 9 captains have captain career course. I got to tell you, I was on a special mission at Fort Knox at one time, and here's my encouragement to you. Every single year, sit down and look over your ORB. Make sure it has all the data that's listed. There's nothing more frustrating than to look at an ORB that is blank. Make it a priority that every single year, get your picture taken. Get an updated DA photo and have that in your file. Do it every single year. Make sure your OERs are up to date every single year. Do not submit a packet for promotion wearing a green uniform that's now outdated. Okay? Don't submit a packet without a photograph. Don't submit a packet with a blank ORB. And make sure when you look at your OERs that it's consistent. You don't want your rater to say, best chaplain ever, and then your senior to say, average. You don't want that. Make sure it's consistent. So look at the documents. Those things are important to look at. Hey, I know everyone has other jobs. I had other jobs. I had another church to serve. But now it becomes even more important than this heightened readiness in the sense of people competing for positions to make sure your paperwork is straight and squared away. So 3 captains out of 9 have 0 C4 complete, 0 majors of 6 have ILE Common Core. Get the education done. Get it all done. And 1 chaplain has blank for religious preference. Must be the person with nothing but their name. Anyways, I'll move along here. And then here's the ISR totals for Illinois. 2,700 counseling sessions. So these numbers are important. And I'm going to let Master Sergeant Kemmer, one more point. You always make this point when I get to this slide. We're running short on time.
Well, 2 things on the ISR data. You should be pushing stuff up to Chaplain Foster, and the reason it's important because the rest of the Army works on numbers, and that's how you get you get money. So when we go in and we have a conversation, we can't show any documentation. It's hard for us to say. And for instance, I sat in a meeting one day, and they went around the room and they said, we got $10 million, we need to spend it. They looked at behavior health. We're going to hire a behavior health specialist or counselor every, we say 54, 50 states, 3 terms in DC. And I raised my hand, probably shouldn't have, but I said, why don't we just put another chaplain in each of the states? I think that'd be better bang for your buck. And I pulled up this slide, it just happened to be briefing that day. I said, they are touching more soldiers on a daily basis than behavioral health. Plus, they will find the soldier and they'll send it to behavioral health, rather than, you know, them sitting in an office and hopefully somebody finds them. I lost the argument, they got $10 million. But, you know, at least I had an argument, you know. Before, it would just been me talking. You know, so the more we could beat this up, the better we are. So send that information up. We do need to be like the rest of the Army and quantify what we do. So.
And so that's the baseball that Chaplain Hilding handed out when he first took over. It's a Latin for live the call. And so I would encourage you to embrace the calling that God has called you to live. Not just as an Army chaplain or as an Army religious affairs specialist, but in your personal life also. Make sure you live out that call in a way that brings glory to the one that you serve. I want to thank you for all that you do, for your weekends, the time above and beyond weekends. I give thanks for Chaplain Foster's friendship and collegiality, for Chaplain Cooper's service here to Illinois Army National Guard. And again, thank you for allowing us to be with you. And let me know if you have any questions. We're here for a couple more. So thank you.